Hey, folks, welcome back to the Land Fixer podcast. I am your host, your favorite host, as usual, Logan Swanson, and we're talking all things land and a little bit apartments today. Our guest is Dave Seymour. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Logan. Thanks for having me on, brother. I appreciate you.
Very glad to have you. Folks, remember, if you need any funding for your land flips, developments, entitlement projects, anything like that, check out www.landpartnerfunding.com. We would love to look at your deal, JV with you, give you helpful advice, help you in underwriting, anything we can do to be of assistance and grow a relationship. That's what we're trying to do. All that aside, Dave, thank you for being here. Could you go ahead and just start telling us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing today?
Sure thing, man. I appreciate it. Once again, thanks for having me on the show. I do a lot of these podcasts, Logan, and my favorite subject is me, and it's getting pretty old. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be concise. We were joking a little bit before we started recording. I have a little bit of a bizarre accent. I'm an immigrant to the States, legal, I might add. Came over from England, right? Got to plug the political topic once in a while. Came over from England back in the late '80s. I'm a product of a working class family. Never been to Yale, never been to jail. So I don't bring the tick the box educational concepts to anything that I do. I'm really a ground up type guy. I came from a blue collar background in England. My father was heating and air conditioning guy. My mom worked in a bank. I was broke. I grew up on the English equivalents of the projects. We didn't know that at the time. All I needed was a soccer ball and a chunk of grass, and I was a happy kid. Pretty simple, right? But set of circumstances and meeting a young lady from the United States at the age of 19, 20 years old. That
Mm,
relationship, I was in London. I was in school in London, and she was on a teaching program from Indiana University in the UK. And we met, we fell in lust, and I find myself at 20 years old emigrating to the States, which was a real culture shock. I brought with me the work ethic, which was great of my blue collar background, but I also brought the financial intelligence from that background, which was pretty slim.
right.
I didn't know anything about money, Logan. I really didn't. It's a shame that it's not taught to any real capacity in high school level. There's only one line of education that's, go to college, get a degree, get a good job, work for the man, do as you're told, pay into your
Hmm.
401k, don't ask any questions. It's kind of like the advice my dad gave me. Keep your nose to the grindstone, son. Do as you're told. Do a solid 8 hours. Don't ask any questions. You'll be all right. All right. It was like, okay, Dad. And look, I came to the States, but unfortunately, with financial illiteracy comes consequences. And for me, those consequences were one job didn't cut the mustard because I was
Hmm.
really good at spending money, but I wasn't real good at managing money. I was blessed. I landed a great job as a firefighter and a paramedic working north of Boston, a city called Lynn, Massachusetts. Friggin' loved it, brother. Loved it. Loved the chaos. Loved the camaraderie. Loved the lunacy. We worked in a pretty tough part of Massachusetts, and leading into the financial crash and crisis, I was following a plan that a lot of people followed, which was, whatever the news was telling us to do at the time, right? I
Hmm.
never asked questions. Refinance your house. Remember pulse lending? If you had a pulse, you could get a loan.
Yeah.
Right? Refinance my primary residence probably 3 times in 18 months.
Wow.
Maxed out all equity. Market crashed. I'm working 120 hours a week, 3 full-time jobs, including construction. And it was a shit show. I'm going to be frank with you. It really was. Wife, 2 kids, losing my home. Marriage is taking a beating. Kids are getting only the grumpy dad. So you get the message, right? You get the
Yep.
story. Um, I'm a man of faith. I'm also sober 35 years, and I was down the beach. I was praying to my God. I'm like, what went wrong, right? What did I do wrong? That's what I need some advice on. God, it's your fault, right?
Yep.
Blaming everybody else, people, places, and things.
Point the finger.
Uh, yeah, point the finger. Guy said to me one time, every time you point a finger out at somebody, there's 3 or 4 fingers pointing right back at you. Take responsibility for your own actions and grow up. And I was, looking for some guidance, and I was sitting in my F-250 pickup truck down the beach, screaming and shouting at God, trying to figure out why I was losing my home, why it was all falling apart. This was going into the financial crisis. And I got no answers, man. At that moment in time, I got no answers. It was almost biblical for me at that time. I don't want to go too deep into it because it's an emotional process for me, but it was almost a biblical experience in, my Lord, why have you forgotten me? That's what it felt like. I didn't lie, cheat, steal. I worked hard and nothing. So I turned the ignition on in the radio in my truck. It was always on news radio at the time. And a commercial came on the radio. Teach me foreclosure. A free 1.5 hour seminar coming to your neck of the woods. Learn how to do real estate with no money down. And
Classic.
I'm like, yeah, right. It was craziness, brother. It really was. I look back at that moment today, and whatever your beliefs are in this world, they're your beliefs. But I believe in divine intervention, and I'm living the results of that today. And I went screaming home to my wife, and I'm like, baby, I got the answers. We're going to be full-time real estate investors. She's like, you out of your trees. We're losing the house. We got no money. But I found a way, right? You either find a way or you find an excuse. You can't do both. And,
Hmm.
I found a way. I aligned myself with good guys who were doing business. I became available. I became educated. When I learned how to read a contract, when I learned how to read a land acquisition contract, when I didn't skim over the fine print anymore, when I realized that attorneys are just employees for guys like us, they don't walk on water. I learned a lot and I deployed it.
Hmm.
Education is great, but if you don't implement it, it's a waste of time. It's just your ego puffery and, puffering yourself up because of what you know. I want to know what you do. Anyway, that led me to single family flips, buy, fix, and flips. I've wholesaled land acquisition, small plots of land. Buy it for 10 grand, sell it for 15, make 5 grand. How you
Yeah.
doing? Not a bad day at the office. I've done that. We landed a TV show. We did Flip in Boston on the A&E network. That was kind of crazy, having a camera up your rear end following you around for years. And that has, progressed through. I've touched most things really in the real estate world, from lending, hard money lending, private equity is where we're at today. We buy, fix, and develop land Southwest Florida. We build what we can where it makes sense, and we raise money and private equity to do that. So it's been a hell of a journey. It really has in 15 years. So that's the short version. Buy me a
Yeah,
cup of
that's
coffee and I'll give you the long version.
if you live closer, I would. Maybe when I'm in
Yeah,
Boston next time.
yeah,
But
there you
that's
go.
that's interesting. Yeah, I'm 3.5 years sober as well, and I think in sobriety you find that they call it the gift of desperation. You hit your rock bottom, and
Yeah,
then all of a sudden there's like this strike of inspiration, and it sounds
yeah,
like you had that moment in your truck as well. Um,
yeah, for
and I
sure, for
I
sure.
really relate to that. I was when I was, I guess it was about 8 or 9 years ago now when I started real estate. It was very similar. I was working, I mean, very close to 100 hours a week, something like that. I was
Yeah,
working a
yeah,
full-time construction project management job. I was working at two separate restaurants, and I was looking at my accounts, and we were just barely breaking even every month. 3 kids, and I just like, there's no future in any of this, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
same thing. I
It's
was
a
sitting in
lose.
my
It's a loser's bet, right?
yeah.
It's a loser's bet. It really is.
Yeah, and I realized that just the same thing. I was like, there's this myth that if you just work for somebody, you'll be okay.
It's a myth.
It's a
It's
myth.
disgusting. It's
Uh,
disgusting.
you have zero. If you think you have no control over your life when you're an entrepreneur, imagine being at the whim of
Yeah,
another entrepreneur.
yeah,
Like, how is
yeah,
there
yeah,
safety in that? Um,
yeah, yeah,
but yeah, same
yeah,
sort of deal. I was sitting in my car, and all of a sudden, this podcast, listening to real estate podcasts, and this one really spoke to me
yeah.
about buying and selling land, and I was like, I think I could do that. Same thing. Rushed home, told my wife. She thought I was
Did you
crazy.
really? That's
Yeah.
so crazy,
Yep.
bro. That's awesome, man. That's
Yep.
awesome. Look, God has got his, there's always a plan, right? It really is. There's a plan for some people to just, live in fear. I have tattooed on my arm my years of sobriety, and right above it in Latin it says "Reponi timor meum confide," which means replace my fear with
With
faith,
faith. Yeah.
right? Because when you go into, let's just be realistic, when you go into a multi-million dollar land acquisition, building acquisition, raising capital, I don't give a crap who you are or how prepared you are. there is an element of fear in there. Like, what the heck am I doing? I'm not supposed to be here, right? Like I would be on national TV. I'd be on, Squawk Box with Joe Kiernan and Becky Quick, and I'd be like, "Do these people know who I am?" You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
You get
five
that
months ago, I was
imposter
sitting in,
syndrome.
right, imposter
Yep.
syndrome. So overcoming that fear takes practice, takes commitment, but it takes teamwork, right? Locking arms with the right people around you to be able to move forward in faith. And when I get out of my own way and let the plan manifest itself, good things tend to happen. Who would have known that our story was that similar when we only met
Yeah.
5-10 minutes ago on a podcast? How you doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I see you now. I got you.
Yeah.
I know who you are, as do you. So it doesn't surprise me that these things happen anymore.
Yeah, and I do think that it's almost a common trend too. You hear very similar stories from real estate investors. It's like because they know what the bottom is, they're not afraid of it anymore. It's
Yeah,
like they hit that
yeah,
bottom and they realized, hey, been there, survived it. Let's go try to do something crazy. At least we
yeah,
can grip and
yeah.
rip this life. Um,
What do you
that's
what do
really
you
cool.
think of this? My business partner in the private equity down in Southwest Florida. So I'm up in Boston, but my business part about my age. Walter's 60 or 61. I just turned 59 back in October. So, we're not kids anymore. We've seen some stuff. But what's interesting is I shared with you, I was a paramedic and a firefighter for 16 years in Lynn, Massachusetts, which is a pretty tough town. And Walter was special forces in the
Mm,
military.
yep.
And, you bring that concept to the conversation of like, I've seen some stuff. I've been through some stuff.
Hmm.
And what Walter and I would do is we would look at a transaction, we would look at a scenario, and for most people, I would assume it would be so fear-inducing that they would walk away from it and not even give it a crack, right? I can't tell you how many times we would look at each other and go, "This isn't an emergency yet, right? This isn't a run for the hills moment. This
Hmm.
is more due diligence. This is buck up, lean in, step up." Um, Walter would say on occasion, "Can you still fight?" Which is a military term of, we're taking some shit right now. Are
Hmm.
you going to step up? Can you lean in? Can you fight? Do you have energy left? Are you committed? And that can be a little too strong for the average wannabe who's listening to our podcast,
Yeah.
right? And I just gave him a dig when I used that terminology. The
Yeah.
average wannabe who listens to a podcast and is never going to do anything, right? They're just going to take information, and they're not going to either initiate or deploy what they learn, or they just can't get over that complacency, right? Complacency kills opportunity over and over and over again. And it's who you surround yourself with. I think that creates the opportunities and the successes. And just know that you will fail. I don't care who you are. You're going to fail, but fail forward. Okay, fail forward. Embrace failure, and then don't do it again. Right? Screw me once, shame on me. Screw me twice, right? No, was it screw me once, shame on you? Screw me twice, shame on me. So it's a different world, entrepreneurship. You live and die by your own sword and your own decisions.
Yeah. And I think, um, let's start getting into some real estate here. I mean, I love
Yeah,
this stuff. I
sure.
could talk about this stuff all day.
Yeah, yeah, of
Um,
course.
but to your point, and I think, maybe there's going to be some people listening that are been like, oh, this is the 500th podcast that I've
Yeah,
listened to and I haven't done
yeah,
anything.
yeah.
Um, there is the reality of fear of failure, and
Hmm.
framing that is one of the hardest things in the beginning, is going into something knowing you will fail.
Hmm.
In real
Hmm.
estate, you will most likely lose money at some point. Maybe it is your first
Yeah,
deal. Maybe it's your
yeah,
sixth deal. Maybe it's your
yeah.
100th deal. Honestly, it's better to lose money on your first deal that's small than to
Yes.
get where you're into six, seven, eight figures
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then you hit your
yeah,
first failure.
yeah, yeah,
But reframing that instead of failure is just inevitable learning.
yeah.
My partner and I, we talked about like everything that we do, scaling from little flips into developments and bigger projects.
Yeah.
Every time we lose money, we're just paying for our education. That's all. We're not going to
Correct.
get a master's degree or a
Yes.
doctorate. If we did, we would pay way more than we're losing in this business. So might as well just, all right, write that off as cost of learning. That's
Hmm.
all it is.
You will always pay for your education. You can either buy somebody else's mistakes or just accept the fact that you're going to make your own. The only thing I will say is that when I learned to pay for somebody else's mistakes, the impact of that cost or expense to me was less than when I went out there and made them myself. And I've done both. I've
Hmm.
absolutely done both. From, 40,000 to millions of dollars of challenges that I've faced in my business. Um, that's the tenacity component. Are you going to hang? Right? It's interesting as well, and I say this because I have to, right? I have a conscience today. I've stood on stages as an educator for well over 10 years, right? And your comment just now was, I could stay in this all day long, but we're going to get to the real estate, right?
Hmm.
What I think most people fail to understand, not you and not I, what most people fail to understand, real estate is fifth grade math.
Yeah,
That's what it
exactly.
is, right? It's fifth grade mathematics. So if I could be so presumptuous as to suggest that everybody listening to this podcast can do fifth grade math, I'm just going to throw that out there. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But I'm going to make that assumption. So if that's the case, why isn't everybody doing what we're talking about? You know why? Because they haven't got the piece that we're describing right now,
Hmm.
which is the committedness, the mindset, the overcoming of fear, the embracing of failure, surrounding themselves with people who are doing the business at the highest level that they possibly can, finding what their value is. I don't give a crap about a piece of land. I don't care about multifamily assets. I don't care about single family flips. I care about the center from which I operate so that I can go out and do all of those things because it's fifth grade mathematics. I can't tell you how many times I would hear, when are we going to get to the meat and potatoes? Right? That's what they want. Meat and potato. Okay, I'm going to give you a spreadsheet that can analyze a land acquisition in less than 35 minutes. Guess what? Numbnuts, you're not going to do anything with it.
Right.
You're going to, oh, I analyzed some land. Great. Now what? Nothing. Nothing, because I didn't lay the foundation first. I didn't
Yeah.
understand the value of what it is that we do every day. So, I don't want to go overly direct, but it is what it is, brother. I don't have to please anybody anymore. My people pleasing days are long gone.
Yeah, and I think some people get frustrated, just like you're saying. They're like, just get to the secrets. That is the secret.
I just gave it
That
to you.
is the
Yeah,
secret. It's like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
willingness, being able to sit
Belief.
in very
Yeah.
uncomfortable situations,
Yes.
take
Yes.
risks. That is the secret. I mean, I've known like the least. I should. This isn't a blanket statement, but I've done a lot of like coaching and calls with people that are trying to leave a W-2 that's
Yeah.
comfy and just make more money and have freedom. And they're the hardest ones to convert because
Of
they
course.
have the comfort. And it's like, well, yeah, if I do this, that's such a gamble. I'm like, yeah, like
Yeah.
there's this big
Correct.
casino like a couple hours north of Dallas and Oklahoma,
Yeah.
and everybody goes up there, and I've been invited over and over again. They're like, hey, you want to go to Choctaw? I'm like, no, I'm not much of a gambler. And then I sit and I'm like, well, I mean, that's
Yes,
kind
I
of
am.
all I do. That's just why that's not
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I try to
Yeah.
gamble and make it look smart. Um, yeah. So, well, let's get into this. So right now, you have your hands on a lot of different things,
Hmm.
right? So what I'm interested in talking to you is, so you're at the point where you're um, operating with a lot of OPM, other people's money. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and I think honestly, that's probably one of the scariest things for me is
It
to
is.
this
It
day, it's
is.
like, I could go, well, first of all, it's because I don't borrow money from just random people. It's never nameless or faceless. It's always
Hmm.
somebody I know,
Hmm.
somebody I already
Hmm.
trust, somebody I have a relationship
Hmm.
with, somebody who I
Hmm.
oftentimes know their family and their kids.
Hmm.
So I have
Hmm.
like not only the responsibility of their money, but the well-being of their family in my mind or
Yeah.
whatever else.
Yeah.
So, um, I wonder, how do you sort of responsibly manage that emotionally, but also in the fifth grade math sense you were talking about before?
Emotionally, I don't do well.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna tell you it's all good. Look, everybody who deploys capital into a land acquisition, an entitlement acquisition, a development, whatever it is, right, is an accredited investor, first of all.
Hmm.
So as you know, with SEC compliance, a Reg D scenario, they have to be accredited, and which is upsetting to me is the fact that just because they have an earning capacity, therefore, they are supposed to be knowledgeable about what it is that they're doing.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the majority of accredited investors are not.
Hmm.
So how do I manage that emotionally? I overeducate. Just because somebody can write a check doesn't mean that they should.
Hmm.
And when things go sideways, and they will, as we've already discussed, when things go sideways, even though they've signed that piece of paper acknowledging the fact that they can lose their principal, not
Hmm.
some of it, but all of it,
Yep.
um, it doesn't change the way it feels as the operator, right?
Hmm.
As the GP, the general partner in that deal. I'm not good at it. I'm going to be frank with you, Logan. I'm not going to paint a pretty picture telling you I'm great at bringing challenging news to the table. I hate it. I hate it.
Hmm.
When an investor says, "Hey, Dave, I understand 90% of this deal, but what I'm really doing is I'm betting on the jockey and not the horse." You own that, dude.
Yeah.
You own that. And I own that whether it's somebody that I have an intimate relationship with or whether it's somebody that I don't. I own it no matter what. That being said, if I cannot box out every corner, if I cannot, in good faith and honesty, look at the scenario and say, everything that I did leading up to that point of challenge, whatever it may be, big or small, if I cannot look at the processes leading up to that and say with honesty to myself, to nobody else, I did what I was supposed to do. I
Yeah.
boxed out the corners. I underwrote to the market conditions, and then I was conservative on top of that. I stress tested all of my models. I told my investors that they're coming in early on land acquisition and entitlement, which is why they have a potential higher equity multiple return than the LP capital that we bring in later on, right?
Hmm.
Like I've given the clarity of what the investment is. And at the end of the day, I cannot control all forces of nature or other people. When a bad actor gets into the mix, I did my due diligence. I tried, right? I tried. I sat. I interviewed. I communicated. I oversaw. And yet stuff can happen. Can't control hurricanes in Southwest Florida, bro.
Hmm.
Can't. Do the best I can. Make sure I'm not on the coast. I'm inland, right? I'm like
Yeah.
everything that I can do to de-risk an investment has been done. I look at your Blackstones and your large investment houses, and I think to myself, those guys, put their head down at night after watching billions, if not trillions, of other people's value disappear.
Yeah.
And they get up the next day and they go, well, that was a sucky day in the market.
Yeah.
And then they go
Glad I'm
back
still
to,
rich.
right, I'm still rich. They go back to the Middle East and, they take some more shake money and they try and do it all over again. And, it's I'm not that good. I'm not. I'm not that good. I gave you my background. So emotionally, I don't do well with it. But from the business standpoint, I'm adamant about boxing out the corners, which is my phraseology for just saying due diligence, right?
Hmm.
And underwriting conservatively, not like these bandits did during COVID, who are 10% rent increase year over year for the next 10 years. That's why I'm giving you a three equity multiple on your deal.
Hmm.
That's just lying.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, bro. It's not easy. If anybody tells you it's easy, they're a liar. That being said, it is achievable. But do you have the metal? Do you have the
Yeah.
knowledge? And are you going to implement? Same thing we
Right.
talked about before. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think a good point there, and a lesson I've learned as well is if things do start going sideways, you have that
Yeah.
conversation as early as possible and as
Yeah.
frankly
Yeah.
as possible with
Yeah. Yeah.
whoever's money you're
Yeah.
holding.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
worst thing you can do is be dishonest, string them along, or
Yeah,
try
yeah,
to fix it without telling them there's a problem.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All of those things can cost you credibility. And in this industry, well, I should say there's a lot of people that are uncredible that are still just rolling happily. But, for me, I think that's the most important part is. But anyways, so let's talk about, so you will build ground up apartments,
Yep,
correct? So
yep.
you'll find a vacant piece of unimproved land, and you're usually
Mm-hmm,
looking within city limits. I'm assuming it has
mm-hmm,
to have
mm-hmm.
full utilities.
Yep,
And you'll have to entitle the property often.
yep, yep,
Okay.
yep,
And
yep.
that's is that the riskiest part for you?
It is, right? So when you're coming in on land, there really is very little value in just land,
Hmm.
right? The value is then created through the skill set, as we know, of entitlement, permitting, construction, and execution. I have no problem coming in with, buying the entitlements and the land from somebody else who's already done that work, as long as they've done it properly, as long
Hmm.
as there's, good plans in place. So the risk is in the inherent factor of we're always fighting the clock, right? So I might look at a secondary market. The MSAs are pretty much in Southwest Florida. They're dense, right? They really are overpopulated almost. So we start going into secondary and tertiary markets outside the MSAs, and we look at those, and we're fighting the clock, right? Right now, the market says build 3,000 units in this zip code, for example. So you start hunting and picking and dealing with the people who believe they're sitting on $1 million when they're only sitting on 1,000, right? So
Yeah.
we know who those folks are. So we got to work through all of that minutiae to find that one or two parcels that we believe we can entitle. So that takes time. Let's say that's a 6 month window, a 4 month window for acquisition. Then you're into the entitlement process. And I don't care where it is. I've never found an overly pleasant, an overly friendly, right, municipality,
Yeah.
county that doesn't want to bust your balls.
Yeah.
That's just in their DNA to do that. So how much time does that take? Well, that maybe takes another 6, 8 months. Then you've got to deploy AIA contracts. You've got to do all the the infrastructure work to get to that point of having plans and a package deal. And we will write that out for 18 to 24 months.
Hmm.
So, okay, now, Mr. Investor, put your money up. You ain't going to see anything for 18 to 24 months. How's that feel?
Right.
How does that feel? How is that conversation when they go, well, I can get 7% in my 401k. Then go get 7% in your 401k, right? You're not my huckleberry. You're not an investor. It's following the sheeple mentality of 401k is the only way to go. It is
Hmm.
what it is. Their marketing dollars are louder than ours. So in that entitlement process, investors have an expectation of, 3 to 4 equity multiple. Then if they choose to, they could stay in that deal if we stay in the deal through construction. And then that can also juice up the return profiles. So yeah, look, it is risky. How deep are your pockets as a GP to get through that process? Because
Hmm.
it can be up to $5 million just in entitlement
Yep.
expenses, depending on what it is that you're trying to build out. So it's not for the faint of heart. It is a smaller community, but the rewards are pretty magnificent in comparison to, you know, wholesaling a single family house for 5 grand, right? It
Yeah.
depends what your tolerance is and what your education level is.
Do you mind if I ask you some sort of best practices questions just from your
No, not at
experience?
all. No, not at all.
So, typically, one of the things that we're afraid of, honestly, whenever we're looking at entitlement projects, is rezoning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you go through rezoning, or is that something you steer clear of, or do you maybe only close on the acquisition of the property when the rezoning has been approved? What does that usually look like for you?
Yeah, great questions. Look, for me, I don't want to be, and this is just our business model. I don't want to be, on the front. I don't want to be in the front of the line looking to fight a zoning board to make a deal work.
Yeah.
I love I love to be right behind the other guy who's either, made a score or the guy who's fallen on his sword. I want to be right behind them. My ego isn't that big that I need to be, carving a new path. So our due diligence is to look at the market. What has been approved? What is rezoned? What's meeting resistance? What's been in zoning for like 5 years and still has got no joy?
Right.
Somebody else will tell you what works and what doesn't work in a market. So we'll look at that, and that can very much, drive our decisions. Are there exceptions to that? Of course. If I see such an overly massive demand in a market where, myself and the legal team can make such a strong argument to rezone to whatever it is that we want to do, then maybe we'll invest, right? We'll find that one or two lawyers in that city, county. There's always one or two. Like it or not, they're the guys that pull the strings.
Yep.
Find out who they are, pay them for their knowledge, and then make a decision as to whether you're going to move forward or not. But just because it makes sense to you doesn't mean it's going to make sense to the zoning board, the city, the town, the county, wherever it is that you want to do business.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered in areas where there is a massive demand, is that because they are intentionally not allowing apartments or multifamily into the area, right? I mean, that always seems like an indicator that there's a maybe systemic problem you might be facing.
Yeah, look, for sure. If you want to just look at, the demand for housing and affordable housing has never been higher ever in the history of the United States, right? It's never been higher. And yet the cost of housing is never been higher either. So you've got these two opposing forces. Something has to break and has to give. And the old school mentality of we don't want apartment complexes, we don't want housing. City of Boston, for example, has rezoned and changed a lot of its housing laws to allow for building of apartment complexes. Nationwide, there is now what's called an ADU law, attached dwelling units. I just did a little single family flip because I could. It's easy money for me, where we just changed out some of the square footage on a single family property and added what's called the ADU, attached dwelling unit, which now makes a single family in practice a duplex,
Right.
which can create rent. But the idea is that if we cannot find a way to lessen the challenge of housing, it's just going to keep on compounding problematic, right? So yes, I think there is a systemic problem. I think it's been held back on purpose. I think it's nothing more than pure politics, right? Nothing more than if I get in office, I promise this will happen or this won't happen. Now, whether they do or don't do that when they get in office doesn't really matter, does it? They do
Right.
what they want anyway. So for us as investors, understanding the geopolitical landscape in the places that we want to invest is critical. It's on the checklist. It's right at the top. And then looking at that supply demand from there, and then figuring out what is my tolerance for time. That's really it. What is my tolerance for time? Is there enough depth within the company and with the investment pool to be able to sit? Who's going to blink first? Right? It's almost
Right.
like that. And let's be frank, they've got the leverage. The cities, the towns, the zoning boards, they have the leverage. So we have to learn really good negotiation skills. We have to learn the right players, and then align ourselves with them to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. What I will say is this, and we could go just off on this topic for 3 hours. What I will say is this, is I have found that if we keep almost like a business mantra, if you will, of people first and profit second, we tend to get more traction. I think at a core, I think people are good, and they want to see that. So I try to maintain that. Look, you're going to come across a few assholes along the way. It is what it is, right? But give them a little grace and see if you can get through the quagmire to achieve the goal.
Yeah. And let me ask you, one of the things that would seem most challenging for me for this sort of venture is, in land, for example, we're usually trying not to look at projects that would go past 18 months,
Yeah.
24 months max, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, what's the full cycle timeline for the size? Well, I guess one, what are the size complexes that usually two are they
Yeah.
usually mixed use or regular, and then what's the lifespan of a deal?
All of the above. So it's
Okay.
margin, 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 delta, 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 right? If I have
Hmm.
to sit for 7 years and yet my margins are panning out at, a five equity multiple for an LP investor, then the question is, do we have LP investors that will sit in a 5 year timeline for that margin? Is it a 7 to 10 year exit? What's the exit? There's no for us. There are some people that will work in one lane and one lane only. We will look at mixed use. We will look at. I don't want personally for me. I always try and put myself in the position of the investor. I don't want to be anything longer than 36, 48 months.
Hmm.
I want optionality at that period of time because everything is fluid, right?
Hmm.
Everything is fluid. We cannot predict the future. So if I'm locked in on a 7 to 10 year run, then, maybe it's harder to raise the capital. Maybe it's harder to produce that return profile that you want to put out there on the front end of it. I've got one piece of land in Southwest Florida in Fort Myers. We've had it now for 4 years, and
Hmm.
circumstances alone have changed not only the pro forma, but the build on this one piece of land. Beautiful piece of property, great throughfare down to Fort Myers Beach. But as you know, Fort Myers went through a massive hurricane with Andrew, and they went through with some other challenges, which threw the city into chaos. So
Hmm.
I lose the momentum that we started with. I've gone from a mixed use. I've gone through an office complex to a pickleball facility to a yeah to a light industrial with like storefronts in the
So yeah.
front
Hmm.
to and all of these things are penciling out differently through each iteration. And there's investors sitting there going, "Hey, we were supposed to be out of this thing in 24 months. We've been at 48. What's happening?" So then you got to have that call. Look, do you want to exit? If we exit now, we might all take a little bit of a haircut. Or we sit and we take the time value of land, and we go for a little pop 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 12 months from now, 6 months from now. Who knows? So, the life cycle is determined by the investor profile, not by
Hmm.
what I want, not by what I want, right? Reverse
Yeah.
engineer a transaction, and I think you'll find more success than trying to squeeze it through, right? Trying to push it through just because you think it's a good deal. Let the market determine that and the investor pool. That's how we try
That's
and assess this stuff.
Yeah, that's very interesting because for a while there, I was looking into trying to find and just doing entitlements
Mm,
for multifamily
mm,
because I want to stay just in land. I don't want to pick up shovel.
yeah. Yeah.
And I had someone who was kind of coaching me
Chicken.
through it. Yeah, exactly. I had someone who was kind of coaching me through it, and I was like, "Why is this so valuable to someone to come in and buy entitled land?" And I guess I never really looked at it from the perspective of it's easier for you to raise money, right? And it's a
Yes.
shorter hold
Yes.
time.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense to me now.
Yeah, yeah.
Do
During
you?
during COVID, during COVID, everything was on an average syndicated deal, right?
Mhm.
Whether it was a land deal that was syndicated and then went into entitlement, or whether it was existing structure, but everything was pretty much pro forma'd out over a 3 to 5 year hold was the idea, and then exit during that 3 to 5 year time, depending on what the market was doing. But circumstances change. We got
Mhm.
these things called tariffs. We got these things called inflation. We got these things called geopolitical environments. We've got these forces of nature working against us. So now on a land acquisition through to entitlement into construction and bring to CO, certificate of occupancy, I would pro forma out anywhere between 7 to 10 years now.
Wow.
But an investor can come in at whatever point they choose. So
Mhm.
that's the value component. The entitlement size is less investors, bigger paycheck, right? Bigger,
Mhm.
bigger investment size check. They're usually coming in 500 to maybe 5 mil. The LP investor, the retail investor that wants to come in at construction, they're coming in at 100,000 is probably the average to
Yeah.
200,000, but they want out in 3 to 5 years. So it all depends. It all depends. The other thing is I can go get some pretty good financing if I have entitlements in place.
Right.
All right, I can start bringing in some of the cheaper money. So it's all. It's all leverage driven, delta driven, checks and balances. It's almost like an engine. When you want an engine to purr, it's valves, right?
Yeah.
Less of this, more of that, more of this, less of that,
Yep.
trying to get it done. So yeah.
So are you typically going all the way through to construction, and then do you hold the properties and rent them, or you go to market?
Yeah, usually to market or refinance.
Okay.
That's in the pro forma. That's driven again by the investor profile. As you begin to raise money, you have to know what it is that your investors want. Um, a lot of times they don't know what they want. I just want a better return. Okay, well, what's your risk tolerance, right? So once we've determined the pool of investors and what it is that they want, then we reverse engineer into it to figure out, whether it's a longer hold, a shorter hold. Are we just going to own this thing for the next 20 years? We're going to bring it to market. You can't, just because you want to bring something to market doesn't mean that the market wants you to sell it,
Right.
right? Market conditions might say, "Stop it, stupid. Hold on."
Hmm.
And again, that's in your investment documents that the investors need to know that you as the GP are going to make that decision as to when to go to market. So, it's nothing's set in stone. They have to understand, like I said, the fluidity of what it is that we do, and how we go about executing on it. So
Okay, perfect.
depends. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to running out of time here. So I want to ask you kind of a more broad question, but
yeah,
something I think you'll have some good advice on, which is if, say you're in a situation where you are about to go try to raise capital, do you have any maybe broad, helpful thoughts, guiding principles that you live by in that process that benefit my listeners?
yeah, for sure. Look, if you want to raise capital, I don't care whether it's just a private lender on a single family flip or a piece of dirt in Florida. Like you can buy little lots in Florida for 30 grand and sell them for 35, right?
Hmm.
You have to be raising capital all the time, whether you have a deal or whether you don't. If you get a deal and then go to raise capital, you're probably not going to find the money that you need. So it's multiple touches, it's a lot of information, it's a lot of education that is consistently out there, in the ether, tickling the interest of potential investors. So, that's your world of social media and marketing. So you're always raising money. So let's get specific with it because you kind of mentioned it earlier as well. Most people will start with family and friends.
Hmm.
Hey, this is an endeavor. This is what we're going to be doing. We will raise money for it. So, two magic words in raising money. Are you ready? Two words. What if?
Yeah.
Get those in your vocabulary, bro. Get them in your vocabulary. What if I put you in a position where you were protected with a land acquisition where I could potentially double your money over a 12 to 18-month period of time? Is that something that would be of interest to you? Now, I understand it's not for everybody. It's called the takeaway clause. If it's not for you, do you know anybody else who would like to double their money potentially over a 12 to 18-month period of time? I'd love an opportunity to share with them what it is that we do. What have I done in that 30 seconds, right? I've given them something, I've taken it away from them, I've now given it to somebody else. Human nature alone says, no, I'd like to at least know what it is you're talking about, Dave. Awesome. I think I can find a little time for you next week. Tuesday or Thursday around 1 o'clock is usually when I sit down with novice investors like yourself. Play the game, figure it out a little bit. Those are just one-on-one conversations with Uncle Charlie and Auntie Mary and your brother-in-law. But as you begin to scale out, profile your investors and always be touching on them, giving them information, a newsletter, a podcast, right?
Yeah.
You start your own podcast. I know nothing about real estate podcast, right? With Dave and Logan. And we talk about everything we don't know about real estate. Just get creative, man. Get creative, but don't watch another rerun of Netflix, right? Get
Yeah.
in the game.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that. And all right, so before we head out, can you tell me a little bit about your your Legacy Alliance program you have going right now?
Yeah. Yeah, look, we all know if we're in this game, we all know that there's a massive juggernaut of opportunity coming down the pike, both in land as well as existing structures and the opportunity to build. This distressed multifamily asset class is huge. Right now, it's around 1.2 trillion was the last number that we pulled down from data sources. So if there's $1.2 trillion in potential distressed assets in the multifamily market, either in paper or land or existing, how do you capitalize on that? Well, I don't know about you, brother. I'm not big enough to take down 1.2 trillion on my own. But if we educated an army together, showed them the exact steps of what it is that we do, how we do it, what if they could learn how to do those same things? Oh, I used those words right there. Did you hear it? What if? What if they learned how to do business the same way? And what if they had access to capital? What if they had access to mentorship and guidance so that the fear factor is lessened? So that's what Legacy Alliance is. So a quick down and dirty 6-month education program. You will have to pony up a couple of bucks, around $2,000 to get in the game, go through the education, go through the mentorship, go through the support, understand how we use our tools in the business, and then go out and find deals, either for you or for us or for us together or for me. I'll take it if you don't want it. But that's what Legacy Alliance is designed to do, is to capitalize on that. And we've got a lot of traction with it, and we're super excited about, what 2026 is going to give us. So it's going to be good.
And is that going to give you kind of a full understanding from underwrite or market, identifying markets, underwriting deals, finding capital,
absolutely.
entitlement, all that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll walk you step by step. It's primarily focused on existing structures because that's where the majority of the distressed assets are. But the entitlement process on the front end of that, we can teach that as well. If that's where somebody wants to live, if you're committed to being a land guy or girl and that's your jam, then we can help you there too. And I'm sure you can, Logan. You help them first and then I'll take them afterwards.
You can help them.
All right, brother. Yeah. Legacy Alliance. My guys will give you all the places to find the info. Hopefully you'll throw them up with the show notes.
Yes, sir. Well, Dave, thank you so much for your time, man. It was great meeting you. I feel very simpatico. I'd love to have you back, maybe in a few months or a year, something like that, and hear all about your domination of the multifamily industry.
There you go. I like the way you say domination. So good. Right. Appreciate you, man. God bless.
Yes. Thanks, folks, for listening. Remember, check out the Land Fixer podcast on all the different platforms. Subscribe, share it to your friends. If you need funding, go to landpartnerfunding.com. Or if you want to reach out to me, maybe you are a landowner and you're looking to find a way to develop and improve your own property, I'd be happy to work with you on that. Email me at thelandfixer@gmail.com. And folks, we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.